Thank you for the introduction. Yeah, my name is Xiaoyu, and I'm a fifth-year grad student from University of Michigan Physics Department, Professor Liu and Zhao's research group. So today I'm going to talk about the extraordinary and surface phase transitions in the superstar of this workshop, chromium sulfur bromide. Yeah. So I will first give you a brief introduction about the extraordinary and surface phase transitions. And I will also talk about the rate phase diagrams in the chromium sulfur bromide. And also I will talk about our second harmonic generation rotational anisotropy technique for studying this material. Okay. So our SHGRA results is it capable of distinguishing the two degenerate in-plane antiferromagnetic domains. And also the temperature-dependent SHGRA reviews this extraordinary and surface phase transitions, which I will tell you about it, which I will tell about on the next slide. And also, if time permitted, since there are so many calculation experts in the audience, I do want to touch a little bit about our DFT calculations, which possibly review the potential microscopic origins of these phenomena. Okay. So I wonder if you have thought about this, but imagine that you are given a bulk material, and we know that there is some kind of second-order phase transition inside. So the question is, where does the material order first, okay? Whether it is the bulk or the surface. So you have altogether three options at most. Either the bulk orders first, or the surface does, or both of the parts, they order at the same time. So the mean field theory gives you two possible cases only. And which case is to happen depends on the relative interaction strength at the surface and in the bulk. Okay? So look at this phase diagram. We have two options, 1 and 2. And we have two regimes, like JS, the surface interaction, weaker than the bulk interaction, and the surface interaction stronger than the bulk interaction. So in the first regime, when the surface interaction is weaker than the bulk one, so if you're talking about magnetic interaction, then it is exchange interaction. Okay? We start from the phase where the bulk and the surface, they're both disordered. We cool down the temperature. And the theory tells us that there's only one phase transition, meaning that the bulk and the surface, they order at the same time. It is the usual case, and that is why it is named ordinary transition. When the JS is much larger than JB in this regime, the system actually goes through the so-called surface transition first, where the surface orders, but the bulk is still disordered. And then the bulk orders, the so-called extraordinary phase transition. So if you think about this phase diagram, it actually makes physical sense. And this is because when we reduce the dimensionality from 3D to 2D, the Merman-Magna theorem told us that there's more fluctuation, right? And it is at the surface, it is essentially reduced dimensionality. And in order to have it still order more easily, you need to have stronger surface interaction to compete with the stronger fluctuation at the surface. So the take-home message is that the stronger surface interaction will give rise to the surface and extraordinary phase transitions. And the next thing is that the van der Waals materials are actually very good potential candidates. And this is because at the surface, you are losing one side of the neighbors. So you sacrifice one interlayer interactions at the surface. But in van der Waals materials, since the interlayer interaction is so weak, you don't lose too much. And that is why it is more likely to happen in the van der Waals materials. So far, there have not been reports, but there are indications of potential candidates, and with CR/SPR being one of them. Okay? And I will tell you why later. So quick introduction of CR/SPR. Of the Hornbeck lattice structure, space group PMMN, point group MMM, needle-like shaped samples, A-axis very, very long, B-axis very, very short, and developed A-type antiferromagnetism in plane at a bulk near temperature 132 Kelvin. It actually shows a more richer phase diagram. So apart from this 132 Kelvin bulk nil transition, there are two higher order crossover temperature scales reported, captured by the heat capacity measurement. And also, the neutron powder diffraction captures a different onset temperature at 140 Kelvin. It's a little bit higher than the bulk 132 that people usually report. And more interestingly, this 142 Kelvin coincides with the Tn for bilayer samples. And even more interesting is that when we reduce the layer number to monolayer, the phase transition temperature is even higher. And this is, again, counterintuitive because when you reduce the dimensionality, you have stronger fluctuation, but somehow this material has an increased transition temperature. So that kind of indicates that there's stronger interaction in thin layers when the dimensionality is reduced. And that motivates us to consider whether this kind of surface and extraordinary interactions can happen in this material. And I think it does. And the main purpose of today's presentation is the assignment of surface antiferromagnetism onset at this 140 Kelvin. And I will guide through our reasoning and experiment details. OK, so second harmonic generation. It describes a process where two photons are absorbed in a nonlinear crystal, and one single photon is emitted with the frequency or energy doubled. Okay? It was first discovered in Michigan, actually. So the radiation source can be Taylor expanded into different terms. The leading order term being the electric dipole, and we have higher order terms, magnetic dipole and electric quadrupole, so on and so forth. And as a lot of you know, the electric dipole will disappear once the system has inversion symmetry, just like the nonlinear transport that many people talk about. Okay. So we can further do the rotational anisotropy measurement, meaning that we shine the laser light to the sample and we collect the reflected SPICE-JGU light. At the same time, we rotate the scattering plane and construct this polar plot. This is the SPICE-JGU signal as a function of this rotation angle. And we can also choose the polarization of the incoming and outgoing beams to be either P polarization and S polarization. So altogether, we have 4 combinations: PP, PS, SP, and SS. Okay? You don't need to remember the details, but the key point is that the shape of this so-called flower pattern will directly reflect the symmetries of the underlying material. So far, our group has been focusing on using this second harmonic generation technique to discern different symmetries in various long-range orders. For example, the ferrorotational order in the nickel titanate, the non-collinear magnetic order in the Kagami Waals metal cobaltine sulfide, and also the charge density wave order in the traditional CDW material 1T task 2. So let's see what is going to happen for chromium sulfur bromide. All right, so a technical detail is that we perform the so-called oblique incidence SPICE-JGU-RA measurement. And this is because given the symmetry of the material, MMM, the normal incidence SPICE-JGU will be suppressed, no matter which signal source you are looking at. Either it is ED, EQ, or MD, they are all gone. So in order to overcome this limit, we have to perform oblique incidence. And here is the high temperature data measured at 185 Kelvin, far above T0. Remember, the symmetry of the patterns reveal the symmetry of the material. So look at the 4 channels. They all show 2 mirrors, one perpendicular to B, one perpendicular to A. And this is consistent with the MMM crystallographic point group of this material. We also simulated, electric quadrupole, and also surface electric dipole, bulk magnetic dipole, and only the bulk electric quadrupole fits our data. Okay? So we pin down our radiation source to be the electric quadrupole from the bulk. So let's see what will happen if we cool the temperature down. So we cool the temperature down to 80 Kelvin. It's just far below the nail temperature, and clearly we see that the mirror along the mirror perpendicular to the A-axis is broken. Okay, this mirror is broken, and we only saw 2 sets of patterns. One above, one is the blue one, and one is the red one, and the 2 sets of patterns actually are related by this mirror MA. So if you flip the patterns up, you get the red one. Yeah. And we confirmed that those 2 sets of patterns, they come from the 2 degenerate in plane antiferromagnetic domains by performing